Welcome in, everybody. We just got done watching episodes 3 and 4 of the Last Dance documentary. Ethan, I was with Scott last time. I'm with you this time. What have your thoughts been as a whole, just from the first week and now starting off this second week of documentary?
Well, I'll start with the second week since that's just what we both just watched. Dennis Rodman is quite the character. I mean, like, I saw a quote from, I think it was Mark Stein, a tweet, and he was like, Dennis Rodman pretty much invented load management, and he went above and beyond. I mean, he went to Vegas and, like, never came back. Like, just gambling all his money away, like, just Vegas things, like a scene right out of The Hangover.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's just dive straight in to what happened this week in both episodes 3 and 4. It's obviously a Dennis Rodman night. We knew that coming in. We knew that from the previews. And I think he delivered a lot. It's hard to tell the story of the Bulls as a whole without telling the Pistons. So I thought it was great that they included Rodman on this night to not only tell the story of the Detroit Pistons, but also to tell his story within the Chicago Bulls. And I thought that dynamic meshed well together. What did you think about that?
I absolutely agreed. He even said at one point that Detroit changed him and made him the character he was in Chicago, and even today when he was talking. I mean, like, you saw, like, from him in college, like, he was not the guy with the tattoos and the dyed hair in college in the beginning. Like, that all changed, and when he went to San Antonio, he changed, and they showed that, and then he ends up in Chicago, and we all know how that was.
They talked a little bit about earlier with the Bulls in that Last Dance season. It was Rodman just flipping the switch, and I thought that was a really interesting dynamic where he wasn't playing well and he needed Scottie Pippen, and then he didn't want Scottie Pippen back at all. It was a weird relationship between him, not even between him and Scottie, but how his relationship with Michael was with Scottie and then without Scottie.
Yeah, he. Sorry, I'm totally blanking. He like, I can't think of the words. It's sort of like all like switched around. I think that's really like what caused like some of the drama, like people wanting different things, and Scotty saying he never wanted to play again, and then Scotty saying later he changes his mind. And I think that some of that stuff happening in the middle of the season is not really the way to go for a team, and I think that's kind of how all this started.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me how the difference between a number 2 guy and then a number 3 guy is so drastic because Rodman got a little bit of experience in being that Michael Jordan's Robin, that the Scottie Pippen role was for such a long time. And it's weird bouncing in between those relationships where you're either the Robin or you're the third wheel. And it's a big difference between the two. And Rodman had a really tough time balancing that, so much so that he just straight went to Vegas, pieced. He pieced. He was gone. He didn't
Hmm.
want to be there anymore. He went to Vegas with Carmen Electra and was out of here. And it, I have Pat McAfee's Twitter notifications on, and Pat McAfee reacting to Rodman walking up to his motorcycle with a Miller Lite was hilarious. Everything Pat McAfee does
That
is
was hilarious. That was so
but
funny. Just
yeah,
like
it's
any other
everything's
guy.
different.
Like,
Everything's so much different in that time. And Rodman could almost get away with anything because of how eccentric he was. And he leaned in so much. And everyone kept trying to tear him down, tear him down, tear him down. And he didn't care at all. And I thought that was great.
yeah, and he backed it up with his play, like the Indian drill they were talking about. Like, it shows, like, sometimes, like, back then, like, you never thought of a guy asking, "Hey, can I get some time off?" But like I said earlier, like, that was just like he was the inventor of load management. Like, that's how it was, and it showed in the Indian drill. Like, he busted everyone's ass. Like, that's just how he came back. Like, even if you go to Vegas and you think going to Vegas is so bad, like, you just fuck around and shit. Like, he came back and he was refreshed and he was ready to go, and he didn't lose sight of that goal. Like, he came back and and things changed.
And Rahman's that guy who can just flip the switch. It's what you get with
Hmm.
high energy guys. And when
Hmm.
it sort of happened twice during this episode. It was first when he was struggling at the beginning of the season, and then when he came back from Vegas but when he's on, he is on. And that was really the entire theme of episode 3. But then moving on to episode 4, they started it out with Phil Jackson, and I loved Phil Jackson, but uh, I love before we get into Phil, I love Doug Collins a little bit more. I was surprised with how much I really liked Doug Collins as just an overall character. His energy, him just sweating every time he played, acting like a player. I thought I liked Doug Collins almost as much, if not more, than I liked Phil Jackson tonight.
I agree. Like that's exactly what you expect in a leader. Like I've always been taught that you're not really a leader if you don't participate in the stuff that you're leading your people to do, and that's what he did. Like he was really into it as well. Like I laughed my ass off when I saw the video footage of him in the locker room in a suit, and he was drenched in sweat. Like he would put anything on the line for the game of basketball.
And then getting into Phil Jackson, episode 4 was all Phil. It was 100, or at least for the first half, it was all
Yes.
Phil.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was great starting it off, just being like, Phil, he tripped on acid every fucking day. Phil was just
Best fucking
always
part.
tripping on acid.
Best part.
I was laughing my ass off. It was just, oh yeah, Phil, he was that guy. You couldn't put him in a suit. He was just he was the Bill Walton of the of it was him and Bill Walton really at that time. And he gets undershadowed because he's sort of buttoned up later. But I thought it was great to see him just being like, "Yep, I'm a hippie too. I'm smoking everything that I can find, tripping on acid all the time."
And even when he played, like somebody said, like he was like the Dennis Rodman of the early era. Like he was always trash talking, getting physical with players, and not backing down whoever stood up in his face. And I
Yeah,
think that
absolutely. And then his story's so weird. He went to then coach in Puerto Rico and just and getting fights with the refs, and it was so weird how he went from NBA, really talented NBA player, and nowadays you see guys like that, you think of Jason Kidd and he just went straight into coaching, or you think of some of these other guys who can just sort of go right away into these coaching positions, and he couldn't do that. He had to go to Puerto Rico and then to Canada before he could finally get an assistant job with Chicago. That was his story is one of the best, really, of anyone on that team. Really, anyone that's going to be told in this doc.
and yeah, and Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rican basketball league sounds like some fuck shit. I mean, they talked about, I think it was the mayor of the town at the time shot the referee in the leg. Like that's some that's some thug shit right there. Like never in a million years you would ever hear about some sort of incident like that here, shooting the referee in the leg and then banning him from all the home, like banning him from refereeing all the home games for the rest of the season. Like some corrupt shit.
And then Bill got to be coach, or Phil got to be coach, and he implemented his triangle offense. And it's interesting to sort of contradict Michael Jordan, to contradict himself, and to have such polar opposing opinions, where he loved Doug Collins because Doug Collins got the ball in his hands.
Mm-hmm.
But then when Jerry Krause was trying to edge Phil out, he wouldn't play for another coach ever than Phil Jackson. So it was really interesting to be, I didn't want Phil here, but now I can't let Phil leave because he didn't want to be in that triangle offense. But then he loved it so much throughout his entire career that he came to embrace it.
And I think that all has to do with, I believe it was game 5 of the finals against the Lakers when he was giving it to Paxson. He was hitting all those shots. And I think that really opened it up for Jordan. And like, yeah, it's not just all me. Like my other teammates can play. They're here for a reason. And I need to be able to share it with all of them because they can all play. And that's what makes championship teams guys who play it equally. And that, I don't think that's why, or I think that's why Jordan never won in the first place, because it was always him, and it's not hard to stop one guy, but stopping 3 or 4 can be a lot more difficult. And I think that's why dynasties win for a reason because of that.
Yeah, and Jordan came out with a quote. He said, "I don't want Bill Cartwright to have the ball with 5 seconds left. That's not equal opportunity offense. That's some fucking bullshit. And I thought that just exemplified Michael Jordan. It was like, oh, I am the best player on the floor. I will win this game. I don't want someone else taking the last shot. I want me taking the last shot. If someone else gets it, that's fucking bullshit. And then just a couple minutes later, he was giving the ball to John Paxson to help win him the game. And that was really a nice contradictory off of each other as well.
I completely agree. And it kind of makes sense though, like when they showed the clip of Bill Cartwright with the ball with 5 seconds left, and he threw up a contested hook shot, he just bricked it. I mean, like it makes sense. Like I completely see it from Michael's perspective why he would want the ball, because he's good. Like he's the best player in the league. Like, he's gonna figure out something to make a basket in whatever circumstance he needed. Unlike Bill Cartwright, who wasn't really known as an offensive kind of guy for scoring in volume like Jordan.
And then the end of this episode 4, just the theme throughout episode 1 and 2 was Jerry Krause being a dick, and he just continued to be a dick. They laid off of him in episode 3, the majority of episode 4, and then it was just Jerry Krause back to being a dick. Him being like, no, I know what I said at the beginning of the season. I'm going to stay by that. Phil, you're not coming back. Michael, you can be the villain here. Who in Chicago was ever going to buy Michael Jordan as the villain? Jerry Krause miscalculated that so much.
Yeah, that just I don't get that. Like one of my friends was telling me, he's like, I kind of feel bad for Jerry Krause. I'm like, how? Like he's doing, like he's in full control of doing this. I don't understand. It's the same with Moneyball, and I know that's baseball, but like you can't give a 1-year contract to a guy because that adds so much pressure. And they've been in it before, 5-time champions, but like it's completely different, and it just doesn't. It's not right. Like it adds. It's I can't even put it into words. It just doesn't make sense to me. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They were winning. It showed them winning, and then the Utah game, which is what they ended with, came around, and it's like, oh, now I kind of get it, and I could see why things need to change, and you need to look for the future, but you don't, going back to my point originally about Jerry, you don't say that stuff in the middle of the season. Like you're focused on winning, not what comes after that.
Do you have anything else to touch on? Anything else that you saw, plot points that you want to touch on before we end this?
My favorite quote from Gary Payton: Dennis Rodman was the fuck up person. He just fucks everything up. He's a pest. Go for it. Those are honestly, I think, my favorite kind of players in the NBA. Guys who just completely screw up the game plan, because even you're not in there with them. You don't know that kind of you don't know what they're planning to do. And he still finds a way to just fuck shit up.
Oh yeah. And we didn't even talk about the Cavaliers series. I completely spaced on that one. The Cavs series, where it was really these two, not even titans, just up and coming teams trying to battle for who was going to be the next. Who was up next in the NBA, and the Bulls clearly had that advantage. But Michael Jordan, just one of the most iconic shots in NBA history, one of Michael Jordan's most iconic shots. I completely spaced on it.
I completely agree.
And then the one real sort of just out of the blue thing that I had is Horace Grant has a circle face. I was fixated on Horace Grant and his circle face for the entire time.
He had my second favorite quote when he called this was something else I wanted to touch on. When he called Detroit straight up bitches for not shaking their hands at the end of the game. And I saw an interesting quote. I feel like Jordan, when he said that, when Horace said that, but when Jordan went on to say, that's some bullshit, you won't do that. I saw an interesting tweet from, I forget who it was. Oh, Mark Stein also. He said, Jordan's right. Pistons shook their hands, and Isaiah's right. Celtics invented it. When Isaiah talked about how Boston never did that, and in fact they left they started leaving at before the game was even over. I think Michael's right. That absolutely depletes the game of basketball, a whole sportsmanship. It's all in all, it's a game, and it has high stakes. but you have to have respect for each other because both teams lay a lot on the line, especially in the playoffs, for winning a championship. And to not respect that, I think, is absurd.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is going to be our reaction to episodes 3 and 4 of the Last Dance documentary. We will be back next week breaking down episodes 5 and 6. So make sure to subscribe to the SemiPro YouTube channel. Stay tuned here, and we'll bring you the best Last Dance content as well as everything else that you want in sports right now. So we'll see you next time.